All right, everybody, welcome back to First Attack. I am James Chen, and we are going over some very basic fundamentals when it comes to learning Street Fighter. I've talked about a bunch of various little, concepts. For example, on the last slide, I talked about not relying too much on a move, learning to not be scared of certain things and such like that. I'm going to get into one more small thing here, and then hang on a second, let me grab something here. Okay, so yeah, let's continue forward with this. And one of the things that I do a lot here on First Attack, and I do want to apologize to people who haven't watched this, is I do repeat a lot of things over and over again within the course of one particular lesson, one particular episode. This is kind of intentionally done because I'm trying to hammer some stuff into, just hammer the point home, in other words. So I'm always trying to make sure people focus on certain things. So I've already talked about focusing on small things a little bit here, but I'm going to reiterate this just a little bit more. So I talked about in one of the very early slides that there's no growth progression, right? So it's just one of those things that, when you come into a fighting game, you have all your special moves, you have all your normal moves, everything is there right away. You don't have to worry about building, this kind of structure to get that structure, so you can build these kind of units that have this ability to do this. There's no progression. You're thrust in there right away. And it's a frustrating feeling. Yeah, there's super meter, for example. Like you could say, well, during the course of the match, you're going to build up some super meter, right? But the thing about it is you use an EX move and the super meter's gone, right? You got to build it all back up again. That'd be like having like an ability in League, like you hit E, you do a power, and then it just goes away, and you don't have that power anymore. Now you have to build up the experience again so that you can reactivate it. That actually doesn't happen. You just have a cooldown period. You eventually get it back. So in your mind, you know that it's always going to be there. One of the tricky things about super meter in fighting games is it's a limited resource, so it's scary to use it because sometimes if you use it in the wrong way, you feel like you wasted it. So it can be a frustrating thing. So there really is no actual path to take in a fighting game. When a fighting game round starts, you can walk forward, you can walk backwards, you can jump forward, jump backwards, touch any of the buttons. There's like 7 million things that you can do. So there's like no one particular recommended path. When I was trying to learn League, what I would do is go to a lot of the websites out there that would talk about the item builds, like build this item so that you can get this one because this character is really good here. You don't really get that kind of guidance here. So again, because all the options are immediately available right at the start of the round. So that's really a very difficult thing to deal with. And, like I said, trying to focus on all the small little parts is really key. So, focus on them individually, one at a time. If you sit there and try to learn how to do everything all at the same time, you're never going to get anywhere. You're going to be, I need to work on my anti-air, but when I try to focus on anti-air, then the guy comes in at me and starts beating me up with footsies. So I got to learn footsies and anti-air at the same time. But then he's really good at zoning me out, so I need to learn to rush down. But then once I start to rush down, he blocks a lot, so now I've got to learn frame traps. And, if you do this to yourself, you're never going to get anywhere in fighting games. And it's one of the hardest things about it is nowadays, I noticed a long time ago when people used to watch fighting games, when they watched good players play, before streaming, before YouTube, it was a rare treat. You didn't really get to see a lot of the strong players play a lot. So when you played at home, you didn't have a frame of reference. So you just did what worked for you. One of the interesting things about the streaming age, the YouTube age, is that everybody can watch Justin Wong, everyone can watch Ricky Ortiz and Eduardo and Daigo and Yipes and Chris G and all these guys playing constantly. So when you see them do stuff, you just think to yourself, I want to do this too. It's just a video game. The interesting thing about it is when you watch a professional sport, if you see a quarterback throw like the most ridiculous pass, or if you see like LeBron just like bowl 7 people over. I know there's not even 7 people on. Yeah, he's bowling over his own teammates. When he bowls everybody over and goes for a thunderous dunk, Nobody out there actually says to themselves, man, I'm going to go on the court and do exactly that. Nobody says that, because everyone in their mind says, I can't do that. That's not in my ability to do that. Maybe I could do it if I practiced a lot, but normally I can't do that. But for some unknown reason, when it comes to fighting games, when you see someone do something, you think you can do it right away. And, you know, it's a real problem for that. And execution is probably one of the main areas where this seems to happen to people. You see Justin, you see Ricky do standing light kick into standing heavy punch with Rufus. It's a one frame link. That's hard to do. You're hitting a button at 1/60th of a second. Keep that in mind. These guys have practice, they have training, they have techniques like P-linking and all these other things that they've practiced and they can do. A lot of Rufus players I know, when they see that, they tell themselves, I want to do the optimal combo. I want to do this right away. And there's really no need, because what you can do with Rufus is just do dive kick, low light kick, crouching light kick into light galactic tornado. That's still going to combo. In the corner, it'll still lead to an ultra. And, you know, it's good chip damage. You get chip damage and such. So you can do that. You're going to get less damage. But that's not the important thing right now. That's not what you want to go for. And the problem is, what happens is that everybody sees these top players do these crazy combos, these crazy execution, and you try to emulate it, and you can't. And you're unable to do it. Then you get frustrated and you're like, you know what, I can't play this game because I can't do the execution of the thing that Justin Wong, who has been playing fighting games for more than half of his life, can do. You know, I mean, this is one of the main issues. I asked one time, why do people not play Guilty Gear? What's intimidating them? And a lot of people are like, execution. And again, that's a problem, because you watch like Japanese videos of Guilty Gear players and you're like, man, I want to do all this stuff. But let's face it, all of us want to be able to go out there and do crazy skateboard stunts like we see in X Games, or we want to be able to bowl 7 people over and dunk on people and such like that. But, you know, we know it takes a lot of dedication and practice, and you have to think of fighting games in the same way. There are lots of alternatives to the super hard things that people do in fighting games that work decently well. Yes, they're not optimal. Yes, if you want to be the best, you've got to learn the optimal stuff. Like, for example, Balrog, stand jab into low roundhouse link, stand light punch into crouching hard kick. I've always said that to be a top Balrog player, it is essential that you learn that combo. If you cannot do that combo consistently, you are not a top Balrog player. If you are an aspiring Balrog player, you're just not going to have to worry about that combo. You're just going to have to do whatever else you can to play the game. If low jab, stand jab is the best that you can get and you don't get a sweep afterwards, don't worry about it. It's okay. Play within your means, and as you grow comfortable with a lot of the fundamentals and a lot of the important things that you need to learn to play a fighting game, remember that bold-faced phrase I put on there, grow comfortable. It's very important to grow comfortable with certain things. See, here's the thing. You have this fighting game, you have all these things, and you're trying to learn Balrog, stand light punch into crouching heavy kick. You haven't grown comfortable with so many other things. Standing light punch into crouching heavy kick, you may have practiced this in training mode forever, and now you can do it consistently, but you never practiced how to get in the first place and land that standing light punch. You have no fundamentals. You have no footsies. You have no ability to get in there. So what's the point of learning the combo if you haven't grown comfortable with a footsie game, grown comfortable with how to get in on the opponent to land that combo? Again, execution is overrated a lot of the times. Execution is an optimization of landing hits. But, you know, great stories, John Choi, like, he would play people, and he said, I will beat you with nothing but fireballs and low roundhouse and uppercut. I will just only use those 3 moves, and I will beat you. So he's not doing any combos, but because his fundamentals are so good, he can beat you anyway. He doesn't need the combos, right? Because he's so comfortable with everything else. So when it comes to combos and execution, learn something that's within your means. Learn something that you can do comfortably. Build up the rest of the game. So basically, start by getting comfortable with a simple combo. Build the fundamentals around that. And once you start getting comfortable with all those things, you can now add in that level of discomfort with a more optimal combo and start learning that. But you have everything else already learned. So you can now focus on that. You know, that's one of the things that you have to do as a fighting game player. Again, focus on small things one at a time. Execution is always one of the biggest hurdles whenever I talk to anybody about any fighting games. You know, whether it's Guilty Gear or Street Fighter or Marvel. You know, why don't you play this game? Oh, I'm scared of the execution. KOF, I'm scared of the execution. You know, get that out of your head. Execution is something that comes late in the game. Okay, that's going to be something that you're going to build later on. So, okay. Yeah, execution will come with time. Very important to learn. Execution will come very, very late. So, again, reiterating, learn parts of the game one at a time. So, I kind of went through all these things. So, now here's the question. You have two people, right? So, now that I've gone through all the spiel about, like, oh, focus on one thing, learn this, don't do this, and, you know, hey, do all these different things like that. The question really comes down to, then, is how do I learn these skills? One of the best ways to learn skills, honestly, is to have somebody who's good at fighting games already to help you. And you know what? This situation happens a lot, too. This is not as rare as you think. And I'll cover some other situations a little bit later on. So what happens is there's usually a situation where I suck at fighting games, he's really good at fighting games, and I want to learn, so I go and play him, and he just blows me up and beats me up, and I don't know how to fix this. I don't know how to get better at this, right? Or in the other situation, you're really good at fighting games. You're trying to get your friends to play. They come over, and they're like, I don't want to waste all my time getting good at this, and I'm not having any fun because all you're doing is beating us up all day. So if you can find people who are actually dedicated to learning, and you can get this dynamic between a good player and a not as good player, there's a lot of little tricks you can do. Now, these examples, like I said, so I've just described the situation. These examples that I'm going to come up with in the next slide are situations where one person is better than the other, right? So either direction. And I do want to throw in this one caveat here, okay? These are all ideas that I've just brainstormed in the last week. I haven't actually tried these out, but so I don't know if these will actually work very effectively. Some of them probably will work pretty decently, and some of them may not work out so well. But the point is to understand what I'm trying to do with all these examples that I'm getting out there right now. So if we go to the next slide, you'll see exactly what I mean. If the two of you guys are going to play each other, the thing about it is what most people do when they play fighting games with each other is they play full. They play everything. And like I said, fighting games are hard because when you're inundated with everything, it's intimidating, it's frustrating, and most importantly, it's discouraging. Because like I said, losing sucks, right? It's just not fun. And the whole point is to have fun and learn at the same time. So, for example, let's have a game where you are not as good as your opponent. So if you have someone who's willing to train with you, who's willing to teach, or if you're trying to teach somebody else, have the better player play the game and, you know, take advantage. There's so many ways that you can customize games. So what you can do is have the better player customize their joystick so the only button they have is a throw button. It's the only button they have, right? Play a versus game, set the timer to 30 seconds. And the whole goal now is for the worst player to do as much damage to the better player as possible. And the other player can't attack. So in other words, the player who is the better player is just going to defend. He's just going to sit there and block as much as possible. He's going to tech throws. He's going to just try to stay away and just try to live as long as possible. The other guy's just going to try to figure out a way to beat him up. So now what you're doing is you've taken away all the fears of wake-up uppercuts. You've taken all the way the fear of counter pokes. You've taken away a lot of the fear of all these other problems, and you're getting the player who's not as good to start focusing and understand how to attack. You're getting him to understand how to land the overheads, how to sweep them. If the opponent starts jumping away and running, how to chase them down. If you land a sweep, how to get the cross-ups and such like that. What you're doing is you're getting the player to focus on only offense, right? And so the whole goal now is to try to do as much damage as possible. And if you limit to about 30 seconds, then the goal isn't necessarily to kill the opponent. It's just how much damage can you do in 30 seconds. And if you can do little bits more and more and more damage, you get a new record every single time. And then basically you feel like you're progressing, you're winning as it's going, right? So that's one example here. Just like only do offense, right? So try to break the better player's defense. Then do the opposite. Have the worst player just block, and they can't do anything else except for maybe try to break a throw, right? And have the good player just attack them all day. And as the good player, you can try a bunch of different things. You don't have to go all out and go vortex on them, right? Just don't do that, because then that's not the point. You're just going to discourage them even more. Vortex will come later, right? But, play the game with them. See if you can hit him, get him to get scared. And the reason why the throw button has to be included is because if you don't include throw in the offense, no one's going to learn anything, because throwing has to be put in there to get the opponent to have to move. If you take throwing out of the equation, too much of the game gets neutered, and you don't get any strategy involved at all. So, those are two options, for example, right here. Play one mode where only one guy can attack, switch off, teach one person defense. Because that's the thing, right? A lot of times when two people are playing, what happens when you see a beginner play? A lot of times they walk up and they just start mashing on one button. Their character's not moving and they're sweeping in place or whatever. And you're the better player and you're like, I'm trying to help them learn. So you just like jump kick them and then you jump away. And you're trying to teach them all these other things. But now, if you get to the point where you're like, where your opponent knows you can't attack him, then maybe he won't sit there and mash buttons. He'll be a little braver to walk up to you and start attacking you. So you're getting him comfortable with this concept of approach. You're trying to build up a comfort zone. It's not even necessary that you're trying to get him to hit you. It doesn't even matter how much damage he does. The whole point is that you're trying to get them comfortable to approaching you, to how to chase down an opponent. Similarly, when you're the better player and you're on offense, you're just trying to get the opponent to understand the concept that low blocking in Street Fighter, at least in Street Fighter, is the most important thing. You will block most of the moves, and only the overheads can hit you while you're crouching, and to stand up and block jump attacks, because that's not obvious either. To a lot of us, it's obvious. Like, as soon as I jump at somebody, it's like, oh, you got to stand up and block. But to some people, this is not actually a concept that's that easily digestible. So once you limit it to just them blocking, they can learn. And in fact, think of it this way. You're playing this offensive game. You walk up to me and go, low forward, low forward, low forward. You haven't put in the throws yet. So he's feeling comfortable blocking, and then you throw in an overhead and hit him. The more you play this game, the more he's going to be able to react to the overhead, because he's just looking for that, right? And so now you've already kind of trained him in this concept of looking for something and reacting to it. And so you're teaching him anticipation in a way. So these little things right here are, good way to focus on goal. It's not even the direct goal. Like living and doing damage aren't actually the direct goal. You're just trying to get them comfortable with playing defense and get them comfortable with moving their character forward at the opponent. Another idea is just a poking game. I actually did this with somebody, and the reason why I listed Senior Footsies there, because that is a game I think one of the guys in NorCal was trying to develop, which is all you have is a long-range sweep and a crouching short. Those are like your two buttons. It's a very minimal kind of game, and so basically you're just trying to hit each other with that. the crouching short has better priority, so it beats the longer range sweep. So it's like about trying to get in and all this other stuff like that. So I actually did this with somebody, and what I did was I basically taught her that with Sakura, standing roundhouse was a really good poke. And I was using Kami, and my standing roundhouse was a really good poke. So, I just kind of I taught her how to walk back and forth a little bit, how to try to close the gap and roundhouse me. But I took away all the other buttons. It was just roundhouse versus roundhouse. So what ended up happening was now she could focus on the back and forth footsies game and trying to get in there and roundhouse me. And also at the same time to avoid my roundhouse. So by taking away a lot of the other things, you're focusing on this very concept of very mobile movement. One of the biggest weaknesses of players is that they just tend to crouch there because it just feels safe, right? Because you can't get hit. But one of the most important fundamentals of footsies is bravery. That's basically a direct quote from Vi, that footsies, in fact, one of the last episodes that I closed season 2 out on was footsies. And one of the main powers of footsies is walking forward, being brave, lowering all of your defenses to close a distance. And so if you get too used to sitting in one place and not moving, you're never going to learn this kind of concept of footsies. But if you just focus on, like, play Sakura and you both just use roundhouses and walk back and forth and try to kick each other, that actually helps them understand this concept of moving back and forth. And, I really wish I kept going with her to see how far I could get with teaching her how to play fighting games. But unfortunately, it's just, time and whatever. It just never dragged out long enough. But I think it's just a good example of showing how taking it down that much can actually help a lot. And again, there's a lot of customization in these games. Use the handicap. If I'm not mistaken, I know a lot of older fighting games did it this way. I believe Street Fighter 4 does it the same way. Is if you lower your handicap, you start with less life, right? So again, execution is one of those things that people get really frustrated with, right? Because they're always trying to land the big combo. When they don't land the big combo, they get discouraged. Let's take that out. Let's simulate the fact that they landed the combo. Because like I said, landing a combo is completely different than learning how to find the situation to land the combo. For example, you could do with Ryu, walk up, low forward, EX fireball, FADC, dash forward, Ultra 1, and do this ton of damage. That's one of Vi's favorite combos. But really, what is that combo? That combo is about landing low forward. That's the whole thing. Everything that happens after the low forward doesn't matter. It was all about how Vi actually managed to connect crouch forward. That's the important lesson that you have to learn. So if you play against a friend and you lower your handicap and you have lower life, you guys can walk back and forth, and if he hits you with the low forward, you're kind of simulating what would happen if he could do a lot of the combo, right? Granted, there's a lot of meter requirements and stuff like that, but you're a lot better than him, so you got to give him a break here. So if you play it this way, they can learn how to land the individual hits. And in their own time, they can practice the execution. As they get better with execution, as long as they're learning how to land the hits against you, then once they're comfortable with the individual execution, once they're comfortable with the individual how to land the hits, then there's this great discomfort of being able to land the combo in the middle of battle. But he's already comfortable with these two parts. So now the frustration level is going to be a lot lower. Once you start raising your life and lowering your handicap, right? Now he's going to try to do the low forward, EX fireball, FADC forward, Ultra 1 or whatever like that. But he's already comfortable with both halves of it, so that learning that one fundamental part of it will be a lot less frustrating. If you try to teach him that combo right away and go, oh, look, you can whiff punish with low forward, EX fireball, dash up, all this stuff like that, it's just going to be intimidating. It's going to be daunting. He's not going to learn. He's just going to give up. He's going to be like, I can't do this. This is ridiculous. But as soon as you've separated everything into pieces and they learn them one by one, it makes it that much easier to learn. Okay, let's move on here. There's some very... Actually, you know what? Before I get into these one-player mini-games, as I'm calling them right now, let me take another break real quick. And then once we come back, I'll keep going with this. So stick around, guys. I will be right back.